Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is Friday, February 28th, 2025, and we are joined by Mary Olson, studio director at Calcium & Company. Mary has a passion for problem solving, and as a studio director, her primary responsibility is to combine the instincts of a designer with the skills of an engineer to produce a perfect execution of each project she gets. She has a respect for the process and is skilled at communication and working well under pressure. Her previous clients include Ferrari, Anthropology, Sony, Philadelphia Magazine, Boston University, the Philadelphia Eagles, and many, many more. Her resume is extensive, and we are so lucky to have her join us today. Hi, Mary.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. And when I was reading your intro, I'm reminded that you did some work for Boston University. That's where I went to school and my daughter went to school. What did you do for them?
Actually, I did some work with an events team that did an extensive marketing promotion, I guess you would call it. It was like a future look at what they would like to bring to the university as far as technology and robotics. And They did this, they brought all these investors in, and they had this beautiful space. And I was able to become the person who helped them produce all of the pieces that got built and designed and lit for the stages and for everything around all the people that were attending.
Oh, amazing. Well, I am a big fan of Boston University, so I have only good things to say about it. And I love when I meet other people who have experienced something similar with them. So thank you for the time you gave them.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it was very fun.
Good. Well, I always like to get started learning a little bit about the background of the people that we are interviewing. And yesterday, I was on a webinar, and the person who was running the webinar kind of got started doing the same thing. And I loved his intro because he talked about how it was a panel of reps, and we were speaking to students. And he started by saying, pretty much all the reps he knew got into it accidentally. And I loved that word because it's kind of what I try and get at about where we are in the art production world, how I feel like no one really knows what that is. You don't go to school for it. You don't learn for it. And we all just kind of happen upon it accidentally. And I love that. And I just find that such a unique part of all of our career paths. So I'm wondering, Mary, what has been accidental about your career path that kind of brought you to where you are today?
That's a fantastic question. And I love that because one of the things I recognized was that a lot of the things I fell into were accidental, and I fell in love with them in that experience, things that I didn't even know were possible. So for me, I started out in photography and then went from a fine art style of photography into an interest in scientific photography. And so I was a photomicroscoper as a specialization at RIT in college. And when I asked my teacher, how does somebody get a job like this? And he said, well, they're usually grandfathered in. It's very difficult. He was kind of stressing, you might want to not put all your eggs in one basket.
Good luck.
Kind of thing. And the thing I enjoyed most about that major was that you learned a little bit about all different parts of photography: color, light, the technical side, the hardware side, the artistic side. And then you learned a little bit more on the biology side. So from there, I accidentally fell into jobs that were actually in silk screen printing. And then I went from there into manufacturing, where I did a lot of pre-press. And I was one of these, I'm going to go in there as a designer and I want to impress them with my work. And they said, this isn't a design role. And I said, that's okay, thinking I could, maybe step into it some other way or get a foot in the door. And I truly found that job, I learned so much pre-press in how things were made from beginning to end, that is how I learned what I really love. I love being able to have somebody say like, oh, how can we do this? And sitting down saying, oh, we can do that. Here's 10 different ways that we can attack this. And then in the meantime, we'll probably learn 10 other ones. And then from there, I just became very interested in not specializing. So from manufacturing, I went into publishing for Philadelphia Magazine and Boston Bride. Then from there, I kind of thought to myself, maybe I kind of want to go back into science. And so I went full-fledged assistant scientist at the Temple's College of Pathology and did immunology for 2 years and realized that that wasn't necessarily my favorite thing. And I went back into color separations and wall coverings for the UK. And from there, I got interested in what the agency life was like. And I was very excited to join my first agency at that point, where I was able to work on a host of things. It was a creative agency, so they had higher ed, they had things like Ferrari. Every day you didn't know what you'd be working on. And this got more and more exciting for me. So from there, I've basically stayed within the agency realm, or that's where I guess my larger footprint has been there, and in retail with Anthropology as a production designer. That's there. Great. And that was also a fascinating time for me. So I love putting hands together and making things.
Well, I can say after doing as many podcasts as I have done, and after being on that webinar yesterday and kind of, hearing it from the other side, I think the more varied experiences that, we all have in this industry, I think those varied experiences make us all really valuable in this industry, because we do have to be resourceful and we do have to be creative and we have to roll up our sleeves and we have to figure things out. And I think, as opposed to, maybe an accountant where everything is, very numbers based and column based and, you follow a path. Well, I'm just saying that's not creative. I'm just saying, it's no wonder the people in these positions have come across them accidentally.
Oh, agree. Absolutely. Yes.
So in my intro, we talked about, or I mentioned how you combine the instincts of a designer with the skills of an engineer. Can you just briefly explain a little bit about what that means?
Absolutely. So I love to learn about the why and the how things are made. In one of my first roles, because the pre-press role that I had was in a building that also manufactured and did sales and did distribution, I was able to kind of learn and move through that company into 7 different departments.
Oh, wow.
Over a course of, 7 or 8 years. And these are the kinds of things that taught me the ways to be a little bit more successful in your forethinking when you're kind of in oh, wow, I really learned what my mistake caused a person down the line, or how much money that cost the company. And if you're somebody who's always kind of paranoid and being empathetic, you're like, wow, I really want to correct that and see how I can do better next time. So those kinds of things really taught me, making a lot of mistakes really gives you a lot of knowledge. And I loved being the person that could say, oh, wait, I've seen that. I know how we could do that. If you just change this, I think that it'll be much more successful, or we can do it for the price you want, or we can do it in the time that you need if we just change this. But not having a lot of those mistakes and experiences, I never would have had that knowledge. So I what I've learned from not wanting to be the designer anymore and wanting to be the person that helps the designer get to where they want to be, or that creative team that they're like thinking, oh, I'm out of ideas, or I'm not sure how we can get this one part done. And I said, well, I'll troubleshoot that with you. Let's figure it out. And so that's the part where I feel like I've come to people and said, no, we can engineer it a different way. And these die cuts and this fold will, in the end, mimic the same theme that you're going for and really get that message across. And that's the thing that I find the most fun in.
So what are you known for on your team?
I guess I'd say figuring it out. and I think that there's a point where people say to themselves, I guess I would say when folks work for me, that they enjoy that I let them try to figure things out, but that I do kind of step in when I see like, hey, don't kill yourself. I want you to try and I want you to figure it out. But if you find that you're spinning for 6 hours, come to me, let me help you. But then working with people versus them working for me, I get a completely different vibe where sometimes I feel like this life raft where they kind of like, we've got this. And then all of a sudden something kind of goes real wrong and they need somebody who is kind of more, I would think more recently, especially, I'm very decisive because of those experiences. And I find that there's a lot of anxiety and nervousness, especially in the healthcare industry that I'm in now, where you have to be very, very careful ahead of time. And there is no recourse for a mistake. So I feel like that I'm more valuable at the end of the process in this industry because I can quickly say, wait a minute, I wouldn't do that. Let's try this one. And
I love that idea of a life raft. Our industry is so crazy and nutty, and nobody really talks about it that way. We don't have a lot of life rafts. Everyone, I feel like, is kind of out there figuring it out themselves. So I'm sure it's appreciated on your team that you kind of play that role.
I like being that person a lot because I feel like I love when I hear, I don't love it, but I hear the despair or the worry. And I'll say, oh, no, we're good. We can do that. And they'll kind of just all of a sudden feel like, oh, wait, maybe we can. And I love giving people that opportunity because, like I said, there's nothing that can't be made. We can figure it out. We just need a minute, and we'll get there. So I do enjoy that and you're right. It is so unpredictable. And just when you think you've nailed something down, something else changes, whether it's COVID or the industry, print production was pretty predictable. You could be like, oh yeah, that costs about this. I get you a ballpark. And then things where, you have limitations on where somebody can get their paper and how much they can have. These were things nobody dealt with for a while.
Yeah. Well, and, unpredictable is a great word for sure. And knowing how much our industry has been changing lately. One of the questions I had for you, and you're not allowed to use the word unpredictable now, is what word do you think defines the industry? Although, of course, you could use that word if you wanted. Do you think that's the word? Maybe that's a better question.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say it's I kind of I like where it's unpredictable. I don't know. I guess I'm a little stumped on this one.
It's okay. It's a hard question because I think there's so many words that probably define where we are, unpredictable being one.
I think there's a curiosity that some people are afraid to have. And I'm so honest. I just kind of want to be like, well, let's just talk about it. It's business. We want to see what we can do. Let's see what we can get. Let's get everybody's input because sometimes it's a weird thing that gets mentioned that allows something to move further or triggers an idea that you would never expect. So I guess maybe that's the unpredictability about it, that what you do predict to be good about it is going to probably not go that way. But then other times you find these solutions in the most unexpected ways.
Well, and I would also say the unpredictability about it is pretty predictable, right?
Every day.
Okay, so here's another question for you. What sort of changes are you seeing in, where you work now? Like things that are requests coming from your clients or things that the creatives are asking for? Like, what's rising to the top right now?
I'd say the love of the comp that people are. It's tough, this AI step that people have kind of started to dabble in where it can generate this amazing scenario for you that's, depicting your messaging perfectly. And it's got this moment and this lighting that's, when you show it to a client, can feel very magical. But, I feel like lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. And it can be very, very challenging to mirror or mimic some of these standards. And I'm finding that sometimes they'll show it because it's quick for this pitch work that people say it's good for. But then when they see it, it's very difficult to edit or change or
I love that you're saying that.
The creatives, I feel like, are suffering because they're feeling like, wow, I have this wonderful tool that's been handed to me for this purpose. And now I'm limiting myself immediately because I'm setting us up for a conversation that I'm almost not prepared to have. It's so challenging for them because they really want it to be that good. But even with some of the most magnificent artists, it's how can you compete with something that's just fantasy, almost.
Yeah. We were talking about this on a call the other day about the idea that we don't use hand-drawn comps anymore, right? I mean, those are long gone, but we miss them because there was so much left to the imagination and creativity, and there was room for interpretation during the process?
I'm so happy you said that, because I recently worked with somebody who, for years, in I'd say the first half of my career, a lot of presenting something to somebody was a sketch. It was literally a pencil sketch of boxes, and here's where we're going to put your image. Here's where we think some messaging could work. Really baby stepping into it. And then for years and years, it's not. It's like, we're pixel pushing instead, and we're shoving this stuff out there, and there's more options and everything. And I met a creative director recently who, this was his entire thing. And he came into this world, and I hadn't met him before. And I was mesmerized to see that this is how he was making his team work, was with a pencil and a paper. And he would bring this to the client, and some of the people would look at him and be like, are you sure that this is all you want to bring to the meeting? And he's like, absolutely. And I could tell immediately where he was going with this. And I said, this guy knows what he's doing. And somebody said, what do you mean? Why do you like this so much? And I said, because you have to do two things in the art world. You have to get somebody to understand your rationale, and you kind of have to do sales, and you don't want to. I said, so by walking in and showing them this sketch, he came back with buy-in immediately, first meeting.
Oh, that's interesting.
And everybody was like, oh my gosh, and it must have been how he spoke. And I said, I bet it wasn't. I said, I bet it was because he made them feel like they're part of the process. He gets to give them something and say, we're talking boxes and lines, colors and shapes. We're not talking patient with blonde hair, and this is where your logo is, and this is where, like, giving them something. Instead of reacting to it, they were reacting with it.
Yeah.
It became collaborative again. It became ambiguous, where you were all kind of just talking about nothing but getting something nailed down. And this guy, every time he left, we made progress, and he got them locked in, so that now his art person could come in and say, okay, as an AD or a CD, here's how we're going to tackle this. We already have a framework. Now we just need to populate.
Yeah.
We already know we don't have to spend so much time on options, because we know we can just give them 3 options this way. And we know they already are in line with our ideas. And it really made the client feel like they were part of it. And I said, that's half the problem. So I'm like, you have solved a big part of this and have shown that this is still extremely valuable. I highly recommend people bring back a sketchbook, doodling during meetings, and not locking somebody into a decision you've made about their brand.
So interesting. I really do hope we get back to that a little bit, or at least we have a conversation around, like, okay, here's the comp we're showing you, but we still have to leave room for interpretation here.
Yes. And they get so in love with this comp that they're like, and every time you show them kind of where you're headed in a creative sense, they're like, but we really like the way the lady was here. Can we have the angle be like that? And I
think that's dangerous too, because at that exact moment, that might be where you want the lady, right? But then you choose the location, and you find you get the casting, and you choose the talent, and like it all starts to come together, and you're like, oh, actually, maybe the lady should be doing this, right? Yeah. And you need a little bit of room to be able to at least have those conversations, right? And be open to that.
Of course. And it's weird, because at one minute you're begging them to envision things with you. Imagine with me. And then the next minute you're kind of like, no, dial it back. It's like, say for wardrobe, be like, you might fall in love with something here, but then when we get it on the person, you're going to be like, oh no, that's not working at all. And even just for yourself, when you try on clothes, you pick out 20 things, but then when you go home, you're like, wow, this is wildly off.
It's not always fun trying on 20 things, but yes. So tell me a little bit about, like, what are your clients asking from you right now? Like, what sort of projects?
Well, right now, in my current role, we're doing a lot of video that is patient video. They're doing some interviews. I'm really riding quite the production high today, because last night we just finished our photo shoot with Kramer Johnson.
Who are they?
It, no, and it was such a great experience, and the entire team had a great time, and the client had such a good time, and I just love that. I love getting done, and it's wrapped, and everybody's positive and coming off of it is with no nerves. A very relaxed environment and atmosphere, and everybody was very happy. So for me, it's quite a mix. We have this where we were trying to create characters for two products under one brand. So we wanted them to look like it was done by the same people, but very distinct, different products. And then again, with patient videos, we have a lot of requests for those this year, which they haven't had in the past. So I feel like the agency's actually blooming in opportunity when it comes to video. I feel that there's a lot of account folks really wanting to sell that, and clients are saying, yes, we want this, we want this, we want motion, we want sound, we want a lot less on the stills. So we were excited to be able to mix in both so quick in Q1.
That's amazing. And are you enjoying working on the motion projects? Or are you finding they are complicating the jobs and there's not enough money for them? And
well, I've actually learned, I did a lot of print production with vendors. And so learning how to work with vendors has been something that I think has, now that I've moved into also producing for video and motion, I think really helped me in just the relationship aspect. I want the vendor to be happy when we're done, but I want the agency to be proud to show it. But I also want the art director to be really proud of the work that they accomplished. It totally helps the video process with me because I'm able to ask better questions up front that will set us up for success. And I think that that's kind of a benefit that I bring to any team, is that I'm always trying to look ahead and see, what can we avoid so that we don't run into as many problems down the road. So that could be with treatments, that could be with the bidding process. And so with video, I've learned, let me start with saying, I'm going to demand a budget. I don't care if you want to make it up. I said, but we need to come up with something because this is how these folks work best. Of course, somebody can give you a competitive bid, but every time I get you one of those, it exhausts a lot of efforts.
yes.
And you mostly decline.
Yeah.
I said, let's say you have this amount. I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be very, very small in your eyes. You're not going to be like not impressing the vendor. We're not here to impress the vendor. We're here to ask the vendor for help in getting there. And they want to work with you, but they're going to feel embarrassed if they give you a really high price and you knew from the beginning that you couldn't afford that.
Well, and why else that's so important is because as the vendor, we want to give you the most value for the amount of money you have. So if you and I have a very different idea of what your budget is, and I think the job's going to cost $200,000, but you only have $100,000, I've already failed the assignment. And I haven't been able to put my best foot forward and go to my vendors and say, look, they've only got 100. What can we give them? And have everybody feel empowered in the process, as opposed to going back to them and being like, I got to cut my bid in half. What can you do? And then there's that frustration there in that situation.
And that's what I always try to say, like, let's try to cut away and not add. So tell me every single thing that you really, really want in this video. And then tell me how much you have. And we can all laugh and laugh. I said, but guess what? I might be able to have conversations with folks who can look at their schedule and look at their crew and make this happen for you. And maybe you don't end up with, I don't know, maybe as much B-roll or as much extra social content that you were hoping to have because of the time permitting situation or the budget's limitations. I said, but I guarantee that we can come up with something that we can be proud of. I said, but if you're just going to kind of blindly go into it, I think you're going to run into disappointment a lot, and it's going to feel like more of a struggle. And even just from a money standpoint, the amount of time that goes into that they're not getting paid for just makes it feel like I already know where we're going with this. And they might not, it's very predictable when it's one product start to finish. And I know that they think it is because it's just a video. And I said, but they know how to dial back certain areas and how to rejigger this recipe to still get you a cupcake in the end. Yeah. I can't do that for you, but they can. I said, so let's work as a group and get there, but don't lie to me at the beginning and tell me.
Or don't ask the hard questions of your client. You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know. We haven't asked the client yet. We want to go to them with this all figured out and tell them, here, we can do this for this much. And I'm like, okay, well, that takes a lot of time and effort and of a lot of people and, you know, a lot of conversations and timing. And then we go and present a bid for, again, let's say 200,000 and the client comes back and is like, no, I only have 50. And you're like, okay, if you could have just had that conversation with the client first, you know, it would look a lot better.
So one way to combat some of that, I've started to ask for what I believe they would have if I don't get a budget and ask for a tiered offer. Like, what if this was a high-end production and you were going to do it, you know, and we really wanted it soup to nuts, a cinematographic style film in the end, how much would you charge? And if we really wanted a bargain basement, documentary style, very small crew, can you give me a price for that? So that at least when I go and present, somebody has a range to either guide, frighten, or suggest, like, look, we can make this happen. Like, give them an opportunity to feel like, oh, it's not hopeless.
Yeah.
And that's more my concern is I know these folks are working hard and I feel for them, but I also don't think a videographer would say, let me go ahead and requote that for you if they really can't or they don't believe you're ever going to give them a job.
And we're doing that more and more, right? It used to be that I'd be like, okay, well, all right, you don't really have enough money, but let me give you a bid for what I think it'll cost because maybe you can go back and, you know, get that money. And everybody's hopeful in those situations, but sometimes you need to know when to just cut your losses and be like, this is not worth everybody's time. Wondering about CGI. Do you use that at all? What sort of like post-production are you embracing? You know, what sort of VFX, like animation, maybe CGI?
We've actually done two CGI projects recently. One of them is actually part of the shoot we completed last night, where we're going to be showcasing an osteoporosis product. So we're going to be doing a couple of poses. It's going to be really interesting to layer this into the imagery and the photography. We've also been exploring cinemagraphs because some folks we've noticed are finding success in presenting to the client cinemagraphs because it doesn't cost as much as full-blown animations.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them an opportunity to incorporate some kind of motion or some kind of an ad that maybe the client doesn't have money, like we said, for a full-blown animation, but we can elevate existing things. We do have some maintenance brands, and this is a great way to showcase existing artwork that we don't have a lot of flexibility to evolve or elevate. It makes it a little more fun. But I think it's pretty interesting to see how different each vendor tackles those things and how you could give the same concept to 3 different people and they come back with these amazing approaches in how they perceived your conversation. Mm-hmm. And I find that so fascinating. I love that so much. I learn from every single bid that I send out.
That's great. Maybe one of your words. Well, oh no, I actually think you used the word curiosity. Like, I feel like you're always asking questions and, you know, open to learning. And I think that's really great. So let's talk a little bit about marketing to you, right? You're in a spot where you're hiring all different types of artists. How do people connect with you? How do they share their work with you right now?
Right now, I get a lot of LinkedIn contacts, depending on how you change your title or when you update LinkedIn. You know, it's funny a number of people that I've managed to make connections with by changing industries a lot. You know, how many textile people reached out when I worked for Anthropologie, and how many medical marketing illustrators would reach out when I was working with Temple. And so now in healthcare, I've noticed that since I've added producer and studio director, that I've been having a lot more outreach automatically through LinkedIn that is just conquering my inbox. Like, please consider us. Can we come and showcase ourselves? And capabilities presentations I miss because I used to have the freedom to do those just on a whim, pre-COVID, you know, and then we went through, everybody was virtual, everything had to be virtual. And now we're slowly getting back into that. So a lot of folks that have found me are through prior jobs or through people who represent many artists like yourself. I have a couple of other folks that have animation teams and things like that that specialize. But I really try to keep it broad because I find that I can see a different kind of value in each artist that I reach out to. You could have 10 different animation vendors, but they each touch on a different thing that can make something very special if you can see it.
Mm-hmm. So let's think about when you start a new project. What is the process like for you for finding talent? Let's use, we can use photography as an example, or maybe it's a joint project, motion and stills with a little bit of CGI. But how do you go about finding talent? Where do you start?
Well, obviously, the internet. I also have a vendor list that I have been keeping since, oh my gosh, probably like 2006. And I just keep adding to, and I put a little note, this is the project to remind me later that went really well, or this was difficult, but we got through it. And, their resilience sometimes can be fantastic. But when I start out, it's usually, hi, I like to have a little bit of something to share with them so that they have an idea visually of what we're looking for. But I usually I like to talk. I like to reach out. I like to see portfolios, but I really do like having a hand in sharing a list of my suggestions with our creative team. And in different agencies, I noticed some agencies will, it was my decision. It was who we thought as an agency was the best fit for the job. It wasn't necessarily the cheapest. It was who was the best for the job to make the best quality. And now we have a lot of layers that are involved with legal and clients that have to oversee every step of the process that is very different from that. And so it can be challenging because I know that some of them are pressured to get people that are the lowest bid only, but they might not be the best one. So here's where I feel like I'm curating a better group through connections I already have, or through conversation and then showcasing to my creative team since they're the ones talking to the clients the most, who do you think is the best path forward? Who would bring the most success, but also not diminish your messaging or how you want this showcased, and lean on them a lot for that. So it's really collaborative, definitely leaning on my historicals, the internet, and my current creative posse, if you will. I also reach out to my folks on LinkedIn sometimes and just say, hey, to these, 10 specific people, what are you doing lately for this? And follow up with them. And I love my other producer friends. They're my key resources. Honestly, they'll always have your back.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from the producers that I interview, how important the word of mouth is in the producer network. It's a very quiet space in the sense that, we don't have access to it. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't get on those Facebook groups. I can't, where I have access is my relationships with those people, right? So, or the good experiences that they will have with the artists that I work with. But I think a lot of people don't think about how much your group, your tribe, depend on the recommendations of each other.
Absolutely. And there's a reliance there and a peace of mind that you get where you get an honest piece of feedback. Somebody will even tell me, like, I know that this person can be difficult to work with, but this would be the best person for what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And here's how you can work with them. Or this is what helped me in dealing with this person. Because we all know that everything can be very challenging or seem like it's going to go perfect. And then even one of our more recent videos, the day before, it was a Friday that we lost the location for the shoot the following Monday. And so by Saturday, we had 3 people that were going to go scout, find a place, and it was our first time ever working with this videographer, a team. And they were fantastic. They didn't skip a beat. They stayed positive about the whole thing. We got 2 people to go out and scout with them live to make it more efficient. And by the end of Saturday, we were set for Monday. But it was one of those experiences where you can't predict that.
No.
even they were, they're on their first impression project and they're just like, oh no. And we're saying, we'll figure it out. Don't worry, and that's kind of the way I always am, like, don't worry, we'll figure it out, and everybody all of a sudden,
there you are, the life raft.
Refocus.
Yep.
It's very motivational when you have no choice.
Yeah, that is very true. So when you are in this process and you're reviewing work that you want to share with your team and you go to an artist's website, is there anything that is really helpful for you to see on the website? And is there anything that is just super annoying and you're like, please stop putting that sort of stuff on your website? What kind of sort of insight can you share with our listeners?
I love when people have identifiers for sections of their work if you cover multiple industries. I think it can be challenging while I can quickly pick out what I think fits with a project, because I'm sharing it with 75% of people who aren't creatives, it can be very misleading and distracting for them to see like a really cool animation over here, but then right next to a healthcare animation that I think is very helpful to what I need them to look at.
Yeah.
So when I see like a healthcare tab at the top, I will share the link directly to that tab. And then if they want to explore, of course, I always encourage that. I want them to know the most about all the artists I send, but I try to curate what I want them to see first about that person and how they're a good fit before I release the hounds, if you will, and just say, here, go check out this person, because they don't look at it the right way. And I feel like that just hurts the artist.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, there's a lot of work on websites, right? So being able to curate a specific portfolio, I think, is really important. And as I advise artists all the time, I'm like, you can have an overview section that has, a little bit of everything in there that kind of gives a sense of your vibe, but you also should have those individual portfolios. And it's okay if imagery repeats itself in those portfolios, because you never know where someone's going to click into first. And no one's going to have all the time in the world to click through every one of your portfolios. So you really have to make sure each one is telling the individual story the strongest.
I love that you said that about the repeat, because I find that when I look at it myself, if I see a piece repeated, it gives me that, oh, I didn't expect to look at it from that perspective. But yes, this does also fall under this category. And I think it kind of just helps you think more creatively about their work in general. Like, oh, wow, you know what? We could really think about this whole thing differently.
Yeah.
It can be very inspiring. I saw one photographer's website a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was very interesting. They had it set up in such a way that you made your own contact sheet. And you clicked through their website and you clicked all the things that you liked, and it would put them in a PDF that you downloaded, so that when I sent it to my team, the only thing they saw was what I wanted them to relate to this exact project. And it was super cute and very helpful. But I had never seen that before. That was a new thing for me.
What about treatments? Do you value them? Do you and your team value them? And do you ask for them on every project?
I love treatments. Oh my goodness. They are fascinating to me. But at the same time, they break my heart, because I know that 2, 3, sometimes 5 people are doing these. And I know from the beginning that only one of them will get the project. And I know a lot of work goes into these. These are not, I'm making a slideshow of things specialized from my portfolio. They're creating free work. So I find that while I love them and my teams absolutely love them, I think it helps my creative team sell the vendor at the presentation, 100%. I do not ask for them every time, though, because I've been able to tell different clients and at what stage I think it's appropriate. So I've gotten better at, I love that you want to make us a treatment and I want to see that treatment, but I would like for you to wait, because I know this person is going to change their mind about what they even want to do with this project about 8 more times. And when we dial it in just a little bit more, then I would really love to see where you think we could take this. And
I'm sure every photographer or artist listening right now is like smiling and clapping their hands. So thank you for that.
I really feel it. It's just, it is a ton of effort and a ton of work. And it's never at their leisure. It's always, hi, can you do this in 3 days?
Yeah. Can you do this and give it to me by tomorrow?
We'll give you a week to get the bids. And I'm like, yeah. And there's a lot of communication and thought that goes into those processes that I think is sometimes very, it can be hard to see if you're not doing it.
Yeah. What about the award process, right? Like, we've gotten through the treatment, we've had all the creative calls. Now it's, down to the 3. What does the award process on your end look like?
I like to have a conversation. I do send in, time sensitive stuff is difficult. Like when, we planned on shooting by March 6th and it's February 28th. If I can't lock in time with a call with folks, will send an email to let them know, like, please do not hold people, do not hold crew, do not hold anything on your calendar. If you have another opportunity, please take it. But I do like to have a conversation so that they have an opportunity to say what they want to say and not document. Maybe they just want to learn a little bit more. How could they do better? Was there anything ever said that could help them, not maybe even with this particular project, but just in their general future? And I like to share those things. I like being transparent about what feedback came through. And I've had some difficult conversations where, it wasn't necessarily an argument, but there were people that were like, well, you could tell they were kind of fighting for their spot.
Yeah.
And I loved that about them. But in the end, there's a lot of times where that's the one, I would say, my one negative about this role is when you're in a role where you don't get to be the final decision maker and what is the best thing for the project. And you're at the mercy of a client's they have to approve it, or somebody else has to go with the cheapest, whoever it is that is the best is not willing to take a last look or meet that price. It can be a really challenging spot to be in, but I like to be fully transparent with any questions that they have, because I just think it's an easy conversation that sets you up for trust in the next round.
So do you find that when you present, or when your team presents the choices and the options to the client, I'm guessing most often than not, you have a recommendation. Do you think the client is taking the agency's recommendation, or do you think in today's climate, where people are a bit fearful of losing accounts and stuff? Do you find that clients or agencies are more, what's the word I'm looking for? If they're okay with their client choosing, because you've done the hard work to get 3 really amazing choices in front of them. So why not let the client choose?
That's a good question.
Maybe it's a combination of both. I'm not sure. I think, and I can maybe tell you a little bit about why I'm asking. There are a lot of times where we will be in a bidding process and we'll hear, you're the recommend. And we're all just like, la, 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 don't tell me that. I do not want to hear that, because it's become a bit of a joke in the industry. When you're the recommend, you don't get the job.
Yep.
And a lot of times we hear that we are not getting the jobs because the client made the decision. Now, that could just be somebody's easy way out to tell us that we didn't get the job, right? Or it really truly could be a trend where, as I said, the agency has worked hard to get 3 really amazing choices. And while they have a creative recommend, the client is liking someone else. And like, we've got 3 great choices here. Let them choose. Why fall on our sword for this one?
Absolutely. And I guess in my experience, if I was the one being the presenter, I would always present it as, we recommend all 3 of these people. And that is kind of the way I have kind of changed from the way we had been doing things in purchasing prior, and the agency I'm at now is the change I'm trying to bring is more in that realm where it's the creative team is making the recommendation, or the agency is making the recommendation, and whether the account team is fully understanding all the rationale behind all the treatments and all the work that went into all these things or not, or the creative team, that we stand by all 3 of these great suggestions. And instead of making a single recommend, I feel like as long as everybody's coming in around and you have a budget, that's the safest way to present all of your suggestions. If it's not up to us, we just present people that I think are strong no matter what. Unfortunately, I think it changes depending on how confident your presentation team is.
Yeah.
Are they confident going in there? Are they already kind of afraid of this client? Have they already experienced something? There's a lot of turnover in our industry. So you have people that are picking up projects that somebody else started and now they're taking responsibility for carrying.
It happens a lot.
That's a lot of stress for middle management and younger art folk to come in and be like, all right, well, let me see if I can help us get through this. So I think that in those situations, if you're presenting and you are saying, well, we really love this one, if you don't have a strong reason why to go with it, then you shouldn't even say that. You should just say, we strongly recommend all of these people because of what they can bring to the table as far as technique or where they can take you in for social media or whatever it is that the request is that they're looking for to make an impact.
So are there any common mistakes or pitfalls that artists make when trying to land a job? Does anything kind of rise to the top to you where you're like, oh, every time somebody does this, it backfires?
I have not had to experience that in a pattern sense.
Yeah.
I'd say responsiveness can be challenging depending on, it could be for many reasons though. It's not, I don't mean like laziness. I just mean, if you're somebody who is in production or in video, I feel that you're not the only client. And sometimes people think that they're like, oh, well, you contacted them for a bid. So now they're not working for anybody else.
Yeah.
So our project. And I'm like, that's not the case, but okay.
Yeah.
And that's,
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like production, you want to be incredibly responsive, right? But at the same time, you do have a lot of things on your plate and other things have to take priority. And you have to kind of walk that fine line because and have to trust, the people have to trust you that you're prioritizing and you're going to get back in touch with them.
yes, you got to do it, but not be a doormat.
Yeah.
It's tough because you kind of are in a lot of senses. There's an expectation that because you've done it before so many times, of course you can make this happen again.
Yeah.
That's not always, again, lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. So sometimes when those things come together, it is because we curated them perfectly and we're spectacular people. But a lot of times it's because of everybody contributing and it all working out at that moment the way it did.
I've got a few last questions for you. One of which, is thinking ahead to 2025. We're only 2 months in, although I feel like we've already, January felt like an entire year. What are your predictions for this year from a production point of view? Or is it just too soon to tell?
That's a great question. I think we're in for a lot of unpredictability. Once again, I think
we're going to need you then as a life raft for sure.
That's kind of, I think there's going to be a lot of troubleshooting. I think there's stress involved with the licensing, with AI. I think that artists in general just have a lot more that they have taking up their time than they have in the past. That's administrative stuff when it comes to protecting your privacy and protecting your copyright and things like that. So I feel like 2025 can be really challenging for the artist side of things. I feel like client side, I feel like they're waiting for agencies to educate them on what's out there and what all these changes are, and are hoping that the folks that come to the table are going to bring them something they understand or that they can become curious about and ask questions about. I think that you don't know how to ask questions yet about a lot of this stuff. You don't know what you don't know, for example. So I think that this year is going to be a lot when it comes to trust on, are you using AI or are you not? And the transparency surrounding that. I think that's going to be a topic stressful for an artist and confusing for clients.
Yeah. No, I think that's really well said. Okay, well then I always end the podcast asking 2 questions. And I think the first question is, what is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday? And then if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
Oh, all right, cool. Well, Sundays, I love being outside.
Yes. Isn't that nice?
I really don't care where it is. It could be anywhere. My backyard, taking a drive with my husband, finding French fries.
Love that.
I love, especially to fill a Sunday with. I think it's very important to schedule joy, whether it's 5 minutes in a day or it's one day a week or whatever you can, but to make sure you fit that in, especially with just the state of the world. So I definitely think it's important to always, whether you're working very hard or you're not, I just think it's important for people to take a minute and just be, you know, don't feel that you must finish and must always do. There will always be something to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. And what would you do if you're not doing what you currently are doing?
I knew you were going to ask this question. And I said to myself, when I read through the questions, wow, there's a lot of questions in here that I've never even asked myself. And I thought to myself, what a fun question. I hope she asks me this. And honestly, I believe that if I could, I would love to be that person that makes stuff for teams, like video teams, art producers. I would be an art department. I can make whatever you want, whether it's sewing or painting or building or constructing. I love re-engineering and making something that someone thinks it can't be made. So anything that's like that, packaging, I would love to be somebody who could just create items that are bespoke for the rest of my life. That would be
I love that.
a dream. If I could spend my days doing that all day and I just sat in a studio and somebody said, hi, I need this and I need it by Friday, I'd be like, I'm your girl.
I've been spending a lot of time on Etsy lately because my son's getting engaged. So I've just been trying to be inspired by all this like handmade stuff. I'm so impressed by so many people, like this maker society that like can make things and enjoy it and have made businesses out of it. I'm not that person. I am not, I can't make anything to save my life. I'm such a terrible artist, but it's probably why I surround myself by it because I'm so, in awe of it. But I love your answer. That's so great.
And that's so nice because my husband is an illustrator, and before COVID, we decided to open an Etsy store and see how it goes. And I decided that, I'm like, I want to start a business. I think I've learned through retail and design and publishing and marketing that I could do this. And so I started to build a brand, and we started a shop called Pizza Wednesday. And my husband and I eat pizza every single Wednesday, and that's where the name came from. And we do artwork and make pins, and we designed our own packaging for it. And now it's been a pride of mine that my husband has taken everything he learned from me in doing that business and started his own business doing hand-painted baseball cards.
Oh my gosh, send me these links. I would love to see them.
He's made these brand new connections. This morning, he even got to do a podcast, which I think is so ironic, with a Major League Baseball player. So we had a wonderful Friday in this house.
Oh, that's great. What a way to start a weekend. Well, truly, it has been lovely to have you as a guest. I'm so appreciative of your time and your enthusiasm and all of your insights. So thank you for that.
This was so fun.
Good. I'm glad. I'm so glad. Now you and your husband can go compare notes on the podcasts that you've today. And I hope you have a lovely weekend.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much for this. It was an honor, and I can't wait to see what you do with this.
Thank you.